So we will begin.
Do you have enough room? Okay.
Sally, I don't think at our last meeting, correct me if I'm wrong, did we vote for our officers for this year?
Do we have to?
I think we have to every year. And
Okay.
last year, you said you would do it for just one more year. We're now entering the second year. But I would nonetheless like to nominate you for just one more year at this point, if you're willing to do it.
Well, I think I'm stuck with it at the moment.
Second. I'll second it.
I third.
Keep trying to get out of it.
No, we need you.
Okay, any discussion about, competency or? All right, anybody opposed? Oh, you guys, really? Okay.
Well, that said,
So Tom has brought up that we need to figure out about the representative from Parks and Recreation, who is theoretically Steve Knopf. only
Yes.
He does not seem to be
Interested.
here.
He has a full-time job too, so
He what?
he has a full-time job, so he may just not be able to come at this time.
Yeah, but he doesn't, he hasn't participated in a year or so, so.
He's always had a full-time
But
job.
that Nicole, or whatever her name is just lovely. Does she want to?
Well, I think they need to figure that out because they need to nominate their person to come.
So I
do
move
we
that we,
send them an email or something?
send a note to
Yeah.
Parks and Recreation.
I have invited him and included him on everything that I've sent out.
And I would say in the mail, given that
Yeah.
the current
It hasn't come
representative
back.
hasn't been, we respectfully request that per Massachusetts law, this is a requirement.
Yeah.
It is?
It is that there be
Wow.
somebody from Parks and Recreation,
Oh, yeah, because of open space and all that.
and that we request that you fill the position with someone who can attend the meetings and participate in our
Say,
deliberations.
hurry up and come, there's money available.
And can Parks and Rec designate, hi Randy, we're not doing we're not doing anything on housing tonight. There was a mistake in the agenda.
Yeah, the one that was posted on the website was not the one that was posted in town hall. It was an error. But anyway,
The question is, can they designate somebody who is not an elected member of Parks and Rec?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so I think that if you're going to send a note, we should make that clear, because there's a number of folks with an interest in Parks and Rec who might want to serve.
Okay.
And should Nick or Nicole not have the time?
Yeah,
we'll see.
she's got a
Steve.
little baby.
Yeah, that's right.
She likes to come if it's by hybrid and she can hold the baby.
Well, she can do hybrid and hold the baby.
Are those extra copies in the middle of the table?
Yes, there's
Yeah,
a copy.
there's one there for you.
Thank you.
Did you get?
Okay, so you've all met Erica, who is going to be our person
Yes.
who is going to do these wonderful printouts that I can actually understand. And also make sure that things get posted and all that kind of stuff. So thank you, Erica. And Erica and I updated the application as it stood so that the numbers were correct. But Linda has suggested rightly that we need to update it to include the new information that Stuart brought to our attention. So we need to think about the language for that and how that's going to read.
Well, it just really has to be one sentence. It says, if applying for, well, I don't know, where do we put it on here? Well, let me just say what it is we have to put in.
It'd be an attachment to the,
So it's for the historic preservation applications because now they will be required to have a preservation restriction and a contract for their project.
And why are we requiring a preservation restriction?
That's
No,
what the state does,
The state does.
and we haven't for anything.
But how did it get through town council then, if it's a requirement?
We don't know. But I don't know that there's communication between the town council and the coalition of community preservation committees. But that was definitely part of his presentation. He said, what, you don't have contracts? And I thought, oh, no, we don't. But
Right.
And we need to figure out, a way to word that so that people understand what that
What
means.
she said.
Because to me, that would be daunting.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Preservation restriction is a legal effort that could cost several $1,000s per
yeah.
applicant
It's
for.
it's a very big deal.
Let me finish. And, hold on. So I think that we have town council. And I think if we want to make modifications to this, we should send it to town council and ask her if any are needed and not take the advice of who's granted a very knowledgeable person over town council. You know, our responsibility and the only person who reviews the grants that we make from CPC is town council. There is no other authority besides this board and town meeting and town council that reviews this stuff. So I think if we're going to talk about changing it for requirement, we should just simply follow Donna's advice and make whatever changes she wants.
I have an
Let's review
alternative
that.
suggestion
Yeah.
here. I think this is all part and parcel of the community preservation plans and applications. It's not that page. We're talking about applications. So I think we need to draft this plan, and part of that plan, a subset of that plan will be the applications. And in the plan, we should specify, as Stuart suggested, that there should be some background information about why. And this is a project, and we may want to use some of our funding to actually hire somebody to help us write it up, because I don't know if any of us have the time to really draft it. But I think we should have this document. It should outline what our purpose is. It should outline what we've done. It should outline the needs in Stockbridge for open space, for affordable housing, for historic preservation. It should discuss our priorities, our protocol, and, on this site, there are examples, there are templates of other towns. Most of these are larger towns, and it's much more involved. I mean, I looked at one, Watertown is like 55 pages. We don't need to go that big. But I think, and while you're still our president, or chair rather, Sally, I think you have the historical perspective here and can help. I'd like to see by the end of this fiscal year, us come up with a finished product that could be part of a lasting document here. And it would be something that would be posted on our site. Anyone could download the PDF, and we could very specifically state our guidelines.
I think these are two separate issues. One is a legal requirement of whether historic preservation requires a preservation restriction. But I think that, to your point, I think it's a great idea to have a plan. I think that the devil's in the details, though, are we can talk generally about what our historic preservation needs are. It's an historic town. We can talk generally about our housing needs, but we are at 10%. We can talk generally about our open space needs, but we've been kind of opportunistic on that. I think, though, that getting some definition is a great idea. I would support that.
And it's also actually part of the act. It's actually a requirement.
Oh, nonsense,
What?
nonsense.
Well, it is.
No.
Are you nonsense that it should be part of the act, or are you saying what I'm saying is nonsense?
I thought that whole presentation at the last meeting was really Silly.
Okay, well, we disagree on that.
Okay.
Well, I think it's an eye opener for some people. And what Patrick just said is we've got two different issues here, the application and a preservation plan. That's been recommended many times for this community because Stockbridge waves its flag about being historic. But at the same time, people have a real misunderstanding of how important that is in terms of the community. And there's a very emotional side to it too, for your long-term residents. There's a history they're proud of. And then we have the other community that doesn't live here anymore, the Stockbridge Muncie community. And everyone has a stake in this. So that's where a preservation plan will help bind these things together.
It might also help the role of the watchdog. I mean, just this past week, we had a historic structure torn down illegally in Stockbridge. The
Well, we don't
pavilion.
know that it was torn down.
There's some,
has-
be careful on that.
Yeah.
There's some question as to the conformance of that structure to building code, the size of the structure. So it may not have been illegal. Don't know, okay?
Right,
But
don't
we
know.
should,
That's
Well,
good.
Don't know.
our own historic preservation committee was blindsided on this.
Absolutely.
Well, so was the Historical Commission, and I would state, until people actually know what happened to it, it's entirely possible that that contractor / developer moved that somewhere else, gave it away.
I don't know what you're talking about. What
The
are,
Daniel
Chester
French,
French Pavilion on Prospect Hill
the
Road.
house on Prospect Hill that used to belong to Adele.
Mrs. Brennan.
Brennan or Boyd, depending on.
that was the one you were, the
Right, that was there, and
talking about.
yeah, so that's just an example. Sometimes these things are addressed differently.
Has anyone stopped and asked, just as an aside,
Well, the day
Yes.
I
The
was
contractor,
stopping
did they
this-
demolish?
Yes. They went through several steps, but at the moment, it's good and gone. Firewood, matchsticks.
Okay, well, we're getting off the.
Preservation plan.
There, all right, so, we get blindsided on conservation all the time by people who either don't come to us at all or who present plans that they don't follow. And, once the tree is cut, the tree is cut, and we can require them to plant it again or plant another replacement tree, but it's not a full-grown tree. And this is, of course, the same thing with an historic structure, that if once it's destroyed, you can't recreate it. You could replicate it perhaps, but you could not recreate it. And it would not, I wouldn't think, it would not have historic standing anymore because it's a new structure and, it's not the original.
Right. I think that it's been pointed out to us by, again, several outside consultants, that the connective tissue between planning, zoning, historic preservation in Stockbridge, open space is just not there. It has to be reinforced and it has to have consensus to do that. So,
People have to care.
Yeah.
And so I think we are facing.
And they have to know.
The fact that no one thought it was important to get the open space plan done and passed speaks volumes to
I have 2 banker's boxes in the Conservation Office of the last round on open space. And that was 20 years ago, probably.
Right. So we didn't have an open space plan.
No.
It's not current.
No, it was trying to be,
We have one from, I saw it. It's from like 1995 or 7.
right.
That's not the plan
No,
because
that's-
it never
It
was,
was never ratified.
and it was never.
They worked on it, and Janet Shore and Bob Tublitz were.
So we have a working group
pushing
right
it.
now working on open space plan.
No.
So come take those boxes out of my office, will you, please?
Sure. I will ask Michael to do that. Boxes from Sally. Okay.
So,
But in any case, so Linda,
Yes.
your preservation plan that you would like to see implemented, what would that look like?
I think we get a template and go for it. Because then we can expand it and make it specific to Stockbridge.
Yes.
But the basic concepts of historic preservation, that follow the Secretary of the Interior standards have to be the basis for it. that helps you define. We have some overlay districts, we have some historic districts, we have National Register places in Stockbridge, but people don't really know sometimes. But let me just point out one little tool that came up the other day. We use this index for the state called MACRIS. And the MACRIS index has an additional, MACRIS, it's Massachusetts Cultural blah, 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 Inventory.
Chris, what?
MACRIS.
I got that.
And you can get them, you can enter it by going to masshistoricalcommission.gov. There's an icon right on that screen. But the additional thing that they have done is they have caused all these maps to be put together. There's now a MACRIS map feature. So if you dial up Stockbridge, you'll see every single historic entity in Stockbridge defined on these maps. And that is something from the building inspector to the selectmen to every committee that's putting a shovel in the ground for some project. That should be looked at.
The Daniel Chester French Pavilion is on it.
Really?
Yeah, I'm sure it is.
It ain't there anymore.
Even the real
but
estate
it's
ad
on
said,
it.
and historic structure.
Oh, I know.
So-
When it was purchased, they knew that. It was listed.
Let me ask a question, and you tell me if I'm off base. Would the Community Preservation Coalition be helpful to us in getting a prototype for our plan? In other words, they cover the spectrum of all of these historic towns, historic open space plans. Would they be helpful in giving us an overview?
Like a
They already
template,
have.
like
And if
Linda
you
said.
look
Yeah, they
at
have.
that
I think.
handout, there are, there's a template of
See, it
various
doesn't
plans
tell the one.
on the front page. There's a picture, there's links if you go
Section
online.
5.
Right.
Sally, could I just add to what Linda said for a minute? I mean, I just think the most important thing you talked about, Linda, is that people don't know these things and they don't know where the intersection of these things are. Say it again.
I'm not going to say it officially.
Can we,
Well, it would be good if they knew.
Well, I think those are the very things that should be in the plan.
Right. The thing that bothers me is the preservation restriction. And I just want to say, wait 1 minute, that I agree with Patrick. We need to run this by our town council because a preservation restriction in exchange for funds is a heavy duty, no nonsense. And let me tell you, it would be, what is that expression? A killer.
yeah,
It would be the killer for me. I would.
it would dampen the small grant
I
request.
would not, right.
Would
I would
dampen
not.
The small grant.
It would be a non-starter for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Can we focus the conversation? There's really two issues here. One, if we want to review the application for this year, I think we should get it to Donna right away and ask her in the next few days to review it and see if there's any modifications that we need. And I think we should take her advice, at least for this year.
Right.
Right.
I think when we
Donna
have a-
has seen it year after year after year for the last 20 years.
And she's
But we have
never-
not asked her to review it in regard to this.
All right, but so let me just finish this thought. So with the deadline of February 10th and with the need for people to put in applications, my
Right.
suggestion is if we want to have a larger discussion on if there's any requirements we have neglected to put in there, I'm not sure that going through a long process right now is in our applicant's interest. I would suggest that we
I
do
would
that for
agree.
the next year.
I
All right?
agree.
Agree.
I agree.
I think that.
But whatever we need to have in there, I support putting in there.
I don't think we have the time or the resources to try and get it done this year.
Right.
Not for February.
But I just really.
I also
support
Wait, I want to finish my second.
sorry.
All right, my second point on this question of a plan, all right? We have had some experience in over decades working on plans. You know, we most recently did this municipal vulnerabilities plan. A big part of that was the process the consultant managed because it involved a senior housing component and other components where there was a lot of folks who wanted to provide input. Okay, where there was a process that was managed to get public input.
Yep.
Okay, this is not simply about having Stuart come in here and customize a template. If we're serious about making a plan, we're going to involve the public in making that plan. Now, if you really want to do this, I think it's a great idea, but I think we need professional help in managing a process. We have almost $300,000 left in ARPA money that we can use for any government purpose, but we have to use by the end of the year. If we want to have $10,000 or $15,000 for a consultant to do a CPA plan, you let me know and I'll put it on the select board agenda and we can think about designating that money. Now, once though that we've designated that money, there's going to be a procurement issue. We have got to go through the procurement database of the state and list it and let anybody who wants to bid on doing that plan for us do it. So we can't single source unless it's less than 10 grand. And I doubt we could do an entire proposal that involves public input for less than 10 grand. We will have to have a procurement process that allows people who are qualified to write this plan to bid on it and to give us, a proposal for that. Once again, we could do all of that. I don't think that will impact this cycle that's due February 10th, but I think it's a great idea if this is something you want to do. We got this money, we got to spend on something. And, this is
Patrick,
not a bad idea.
I agree with everything you just said on the 2 stages and how to go about the second stage.
Right. I support it that way too, Tom. What I was opposed to is whatever his name was, walking in here from Boston, telling us what's what. It should come
They could
up
bid
from
though.
us.
Yeah, they could bid, like anything
Well, they
else.
could,
don't-
but
that's not
tailor
their
it to us.
business.
Okay, I don't know.
One of the questions that I asked,
Talking
It
about
needs to
Stuart.
be tailored to us.
Yes, of course.
one of the questions that I asked Stuart that we did not get an answer to was, yes, we have this list: Watertown, Northbridge, West Newbury, Manchester, Canton, Acton, Gloucester, Lexington, Plimpton. These are all big towns.
Yeah, it has nothing to do
I
with
said that
us.
earlier.
Well,
Yeah.
Plimpton and West Newbury are not.
Us. And I asked him
Right.
if there was if he had access to a
Smaller one.
smaller one that would be more conducive to matching it to what we,
He suggested looking at Plymouth,
yeah.
Massachusetts.
Way
Or
bigger.
maybe Nantucket or Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah,
20 or 30 times bigger than us though.
Plymouth is
Yeah,
way
but there's
bigger.
not, the size that we have. Our other thing is that we're sort of one of these seasonal communities.
Right.
And
Right.
He might have suggested Manchester for that reason.
Yeah, I think Manchester.
And West Newbury
Something.
is a
Yeah.
lot like,
I just go back to, it's not so much just about the template. It's about building consensus for what our community preservation goals and priorities are. I mean, I think that's where the public has to weigh in and having a process to manage that input. It could be surveys, it could be public meetings. With the housing one, we had almost 90 people participate.
well, that's a burning issue right here. So that makes sense. But I think that the challenges now for Stockbridge are largely based on open space, no matter how small it is or how large. And we've got 2 dangling big properties here right now that are facing, some big changes.
Which one?
Elm Court just sold.
Elm
Elm Court
Court
just sold.
and
Right.
DeSisto.
And DeSisto is still.
No, I was thinking of the 2 were Monument Mountain and the Route 7 South parcel that's just come on the
The
market.
Swan property is big.
Yeah, there's 4. The candidates for open space are.
I'm not worried particularly about Elm Court because I don't think that Elm Court is going to be an open space project.
Well, there are 2
Tell me what that
properties of
means.
fairly immediate. One is the larger one, the Swan, and
Right.
the other smaller one, the Eli property.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think the Eli property is being addressed. So I'm not
Well, it's,
totally worried about that.
But I want to understand what you meant about Elm Court.
Elm Court is,
86 acres.
right. And the plans that have been put forward for Elm Court so far anyway, have been fairly modest in terms of
Amstall or whatever it was.
developing the actual property. The last property, really the only thing that they were going to change that was huge was putting in additional parking, and they were going to do
And
that.
100 rooms on the back.
Yeah, but that's,
Yeah, but
I
it's-
don't think that that's a big
It's
deal
not open space.
from our point of view.
Yeah.
Right.
Packed.
And they were they were very thoughtful about how they were going to develop the parking and.
But this is a different owner.
I understand
What
that.
does open space have to do with the private property? They haven't applied for
Right, exactly. So
CPC funds.
And I don't think they're
It's
going.
private development.
In terms of DeSisto, which is enormous because it has huge
3+.
issues from a Conservation Commission point of view. The Eli property also is, in my opinion, undevelopable, so it's probably not something we have to worry about.
Could you define where that property is?
Where is that Eli property?
Down,
Where the Chestnut Preserve is.
Right.
It abuts the Chestnut Preserve on Route 7 South.
yeah,
Chestnut Preserve.
Okay.
Yeah, but people don't
It's
know what
behind
that
it.
is either.
So the Chestnut Preserve is that little driveway that has, it's on the, kind of on the river,
Yes,
you know, and.
just over the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that little.
And then behind that is 40 or 50 acres that, or I think it's that big.
Got it.
That is the Eli property. Now, the one question is, if you look at the Clark Road side, there's a cluster of forest there that is potentially developable. And also, it's our understanding that a local private player may want to buy that to add to
So I've
his
heard.
holdings. Yes.
Right, which might call to question what you said. Yeah.
so I'm not so worried about that. I am hugely worried about DeSisto, and I'm hugely worried about the Swan property. The Swan property, again, contains a lot of wetland and a lot of undeveloped. A lot of it is slopes, a lot of it is wetlands, a lot of it is, interestingly enough, it abuts the Agawam property. So to me, thinking about the town, I mean, if we're going to have to prioritize where we spend our money, because we don't have that much. So to me, from the perspective of the town, and I could be wrong, and Patrick, you can tell me if you think I am, protecting our water source
Yeah,
is something that's an overreaching
Absolutely.
thing to consider.
And
Absolutely.
DeSisto,
And DeSisto as well. But so.
but that's part of the
Yeah.
Echo Lake
Yeah,
water.
so both of those properties to me
it's so
would be
cool.
more
Lake.
more of a priority than Elm Court, which, yes, of course, we don't want it to turn into a,
Whatever. but
condo
it's
thing, but
over in the corner.
but it doesn't have the environmental impact that the others two do. Just,
So just
That's
two
just my
two notes,
And it's 4 acres only.
one on the Monument Mountain North, this one property. There's a very active coalition that involving Mass Wildlife, the Stockbridge Land Trust, Laurel Hill Association, the trustees of reservations, and the BNRC.
Right.
That is putting together a deal. They had a meeting of all those players a few weeks ago. That is proceeding and has a high degree of I give it a 80 to 90% success rate, mostly because this one family has been working with this coalition to preserve the land. It was Clover's intent, and it is the heir's intent, it's Rosalie's intent, everybody's intent to preserve the land. So whether or not they need CPC money, the town, we had a public meeting on this question about a month ago at the select board. We said we would facilitate bringing a proposal if they needed funds to complete that transaction to this board. So far, they have not needed that. Now, if Mass Wildlife wants to pony up the money for the swans, between $2 and $3 million, that leaves money here to do other things. We've got a lot of priorities. I'm all for that. If the state and the nonprofits want to go it alone, that's great, as long as it gets concerned.
So just to add what you said, I agree with everything you said. But if we were to be involved, where we would come in would be for the town to own the development rights. We wouldn't own the land. We would own the development with the conservation restriction.
Yeah.
So, and that's what we did at the Four Corners.
And now I'm just speaking out, this is, the rumor I've heard is that because the state money isn't available until the beginning of fiscal year 24, which is next July. So my understanding is that the nonprofits may come up with a plan to make the purchase in March or April, create a conservation restriction, own the conservation restriction, and then turn it over at some discount to the state.
Who's
So
going to own the conservation restriction?
I think it would be either BNRC or the trustees or some combination with Mass Wildlife owning the property.
If I can add to that, BNRC often does that, and they've been criticized. There was a huge controversy a few years ago because when they turned it over to the state, it allowed for hunting, and abutters were very upset about that.
Yeah, BNRC does not have a universally popular
Right.
view.
But
Nicely
in
said.
any case, what I was getting to is if BNRC were to buy it with other local groups, and then they were to turn it over to the state, in our contract, offering to pay for the conservation restriction,
Yeah.
they could in turn buy that back from the town of Stockbridge. So we could have a role as in fronting the money and then being paid back.
But I also I believe all Mass Wildlife properties, at least what I've been told by Peter, allow hunting. So I don't know that.
Told by Peter what?
By Peter Milanese, I believe every
Yeah.
Mass Wildlife property allows hunting. So I don't think that you're going to see a hunting ban on a Mass Wildlife property.
I agree with you.
Now,
And that's the issue that
and just to let you know, I have on several occasions offered the town's assistance in ensuring this deal goes through. And so far, the nonprofits in the state haven't felt the need to avail themselves of that offer. So unless the town wants, and I don't support this, but unless the town wants to put in a separate package to acquire this land, right now they've got a plan and they're sticking to their plan. And frankly, I think we've got a lot of priorities as everyone's talking about. And if they can come up with the money for the swans and preserve that piece of land, it may be imperfect in terms of what the CR looks like or whatever, but it's, so far they haven't wanted our participation. That's the bottom line. Not in a negative way.
I'm a
because they
little
don't need the
bit,
money.
I'm a little bit leery of the state. I mean, not that they don't, Mass Wildlife isn't fine, but given what the state does with our great pond, I just as soon have fewer pieces of property be managed by the state in
I
town.
think they've done a good job at Agawam Lake. They're already a significant landowner over there. This would abut that parcel. They're doing that big project on the Phragmites removal. They're trying, and I
With
think
chemicals.
I think it's a burn. It's a
They're
little bit of chemicals
They're
and
doing a burn, but they're also doing chemicals. We got overridden on that.
We did, yeah.
Yes, and
Look, it's the only,
issues
it's
with
one of
that.
2 calcare spends in the state, Sally, and we can either let it get overrun with invasives, or we can figure out a best practice plan to manage it in a way that keeps those endangered species alive. And I'm one for, I hate the chemicals too. I was right there with you fighting it in the bowl, but when it comes to like 400-year-old trees or incredibly endangered species where we have the only 2 calcareous fens in the state, I think we have to trust the scientists, if for no other reason than, I don't know of any better way to proceed. But inertia is a decision, and it's a decision that results in those properties losing, really, really rare and valuable, habitat. And
I get it, I get it.
I know you do.
So back to the earlier points. If the nonprofits are fronting the money and they're not sure they can get the money, and if they plan to be reimbursed by the state, I don't see anything wrong with our letting those nonprofits know that we can help front the money on the condition that we also will be reimbursed.
We can't though.
Why not?
Because the money is putting up in the next few months, and any funding that we approve now goes to town meeting isn't available until July 1st, 24.
Right.
We don't have any
We
way
don't
to
have the
help them
option.
other than, we could come up, I guess we could
do a special town meeting, couldn't we?
We could, but they're, look at, this is a great, I'm having breakfast tomorrow with Rich Bradway, who's now the president of the Land Trust. I'll try to get some answers, and if anyone wants, I'd be happy to share them with you, or call Rich yourself. Rich is really on top of all of these issues, and you got to trust the guy in the room. He's the guy in the room right now for Stockbridge, and I think it's in good shape. But,
Well, as Sally was saying, this is a really important property.
yeah.
So if our fronting some of the money in the name of a conservation restriction, that would be reimbursable.
But how do we do it? What's the
And it
mechanism to get
doesn't sound
money?
like they want us to,
Pardon?
Tom. They don't want us to.
Well, we don't know for sure. I mean, the mechanism is let's say it's BNRC owns the property. Stockbridge could own this conservation restriction that has a value of, let's say, 200K. BNRC then sells the property for hypothetical, let's say $1 million to the state. They get $1 million, but we would have a claim on 200K of that. And the Fisheries and Wildlife would have to reimburse Stockbridge for that.
Right. If there's a transaction that is in this fiscal year, we have no mechanism.
Unless
aside
we
from-
have a special town meeting, and arguably this is of that importance. That
I would do that in a second if they came to us and said that they needed our help. They're specifically saying
But
right
they-
now that they don't.
All I'm saying is make them aware that this is a possibility if it's needed.
I've met with Mass Wildlife and with the trustees and with BNRC and with the Land Trust and with Laurel Hill on this issue. I have talked to every one of these players on multiple occasions and sat through the conference calls. They all know. In fact, I can read you the email I sent them, which outlines exactly what you're saying. If you need our help, I said we could help with CPC potentially. The reason we're working on the open space plan, Michael and I accelerated that because there are 2 sets of state grants that are only available if you have a invalid in-place open space plan. So Michael put together a working group to specifically finish our open space plan this year, just in case they needed us to apply for those grants. On every aspect of grant making that we could help them with, we have offered our help, and they don't think they need it.
Okay.
That's at least what I've heard so far. And,
Well, it's great that you're doing all that, Patrick. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Your plan is great,
Yeah,
Tom.
I couldn't agree more.
Somebody into it.
And
Nobody
frankly,
wants us.
and one of the things I've said is it's better to have more money around the table for something like this than just enough, just in case something falls through. And it's still fluid enough where they're not sure if they need our participation,
Okay. It's sort of a great opportunity for us, though.
Yeah.
To have an impact and to get the money back
Right.
Yeah, right, exactly.
for other
Absolutely.
projects like this.
It's
is
a great
so-
idea. Somebody needs to ask us out.
But I want to emphasize that the Stockbridge Land Trust has taken the lead with the state players and with the nonprofits, and I think they're doing an excellent job. And we've got an issue where we don't want to have too many, cooks in the kitchen, so to speak. So, I think they've got a handle on what the needs are, and to the degree that there's a role for town participation with our town nonprofits or with CPC or whatever, we're gonna, at least I'm gonna wait for a request from the Land Trust, before we take any further action.
Okay, so that's certainly one issue that we have coming up. And the other issue, which we started out with and somehow got away from, is the preservation plan under historic. And I
Under
don't
historic?
feel like we have
Under the category.
historic preservation. I don't necessarily feel like we've got a grip on that. I know this Macris sounds like a really interesting resource for us,
Sally?
which I was not aware of.
But I think Patrick laid out two very important pieces. One, we can get money through whatever it is, ARP something or another.
Right.
For a consultant.
Yes.
And we want it tailor-made for Stockbridge and from the ground up, beginning with public meetings, saying, what do you think? And I just think in everything Linda said, the most important point is we're bringing all these people in. One of the reasons what happened with the Daniel Chester French Pavilion happened is people were not aware of our bylaws, not aware of what the requirements were. Many people weren't aware it was a Daniel Chester French Pavilion. And solving a lot of that is a giant step forward.
But
How do they get their building permit?
yeah, exactly. So what I was trying to get at is that we deal with this kind of stuff with the Conservation Commission
That's not,
all the time. Oh, gosh, we didn't know we couldn't cut down all those trees.
yeah, I
And
know.
oh, gosh, we didn't know that that was an important historic structure. So what is the mechanism that the town needs to go through in order to make sure that before you get a building permit, you know that you have an historic structure on your property?
Absolutely.
How do we do that?
Isn't that part of the planning process?
Well,
Yeah, so, oh, sorry.
one way of doing it is putting in this plan, an inventory of the
Yes.
historic,
It's on map first, we already have the
I agree with
inventory.
you, Tom.
So I have a suggestion.
But how are
I think
they going to read it?
we should
It'll be
contact
out
Stuart.
there. I mean, it'll be
If
one
we
of the
enforce
strike
it-
against them.
There's
Already
hundreds.
out there that we have not only the town zoning bylaws, we have the conservation, we have the wetlands bylaw for the town. We have the state bylaw for the town. We have scenic mountains. We have the stormwater bylaw. All are on our website. Every single one of those should be a part of every application that comes into this town. And yet they don't read it, they don't care, and they cut down
We could do a
trees and
better
they do all
job
that stuff.
of,
But the difference
Save
is, this plan, if you look at some of these plans, and I just took a quick glance at them, they actually have pictures of the historic structures in the town. So if there had been a town publication with a picture of the Daniel Chester French Pavilion, I think
I
they
think that
would.
is the point, is that we need to do a better job of communicating the character of the town via these bylaws and requirements and best practices. And we need to communicate that in a way that's in plain English that lets people know what processes they should follow before they cut a tree or before they tear down a pavilion. Now, having said that, my suggestion to close the loop on this plan would be that we reach out to Stuart and we ask him for 3 vendors who have experience writing and drafting and managing a public process in the development of a plan like this. And we contact them and we solicit proposals, and then we figure out that, we get a basic estimate of what this might cost. And then we go through procurement and we actually hire someone to write a plan like this. So I think that that's all fine. You'll need to, I'll be happy to vote for it. You'll need to convince Chuck or Jamie to vote for it as well. And we can use some ARPA money to do it.
I agree with everything. I think we might also ask around a little bit
Yeah,
beyond
sure,
just
whatever you
Stewart.
want. However you think. I just would hope that we find a consultant that, these are specialized kind of planning processes.
Absolutely.
But I think we have to have input.
Absolutely.
Of course it is. That's what the
the
consultant
input-
is.
No, I don't,
The
right,
input
exactly.
is when you select the contractor, and you
No,
can
more
pick
than
up on how sensitive they are to issues of a smaller community and figure out where they live and what they're about. You can also go to Mass Historical Commission. They have a huge Rolodex of consultants, and some are very specific to planning.
And that's way better than going to Stuart.
The planning people, it's interesting because some of the consultants we've had, they actually came from the planning world, not historic preservation. Then they became interested in historic preservation and added more credentials to their.
As long as we recognize that this is a plan that takes into account open space, historic, and housing. So, we need to make sure that we're covering, we're writing a community preservation plan or just a historic?
Well, what they call, the operative words here are community preservation.
Right.
The umbrella is community preservation. So in a town that is based largely on recreation, they would have a little different twist than one of these, more, how do I say, dense, historic places like Salem, say. So you have to look at that when you do these interviews.
Yeah.
And you get recommendations. They give you recommendations of people to call and talk to. And people will be candid with you to the extent that they can. And they might even say, this is why we chose this person, which is another helpful indicator.
Then how does that work, Patrick, in terms of, okay, so we have come up with company A, B, and C. And we like B because they do all the things that Linda has suggested that we would want. But B does not come in with a low bid. How flexible are we?
There's a legal, this is a better question for Michael or, Erica potentially. I don't know. There may be some salient details that requires that make our select, as long as you can justify the selection, as I understand it, then you have some flexibility in the selection. It just has to be a public process of the procurement. And with MVP, we must have, Lord Best and I managed that municipal vulnerabilities plan. I must have had 50 conversations with Kathy Keeman, who was from the BSC group and managed that project. They were constantly asking our opinion and insight. And so the way this would probably work is that 2 or 3 of us would choose a vendor out of a short list after it's posted. And then once that vendor is chosen, we'd have 1 point person or 2 point people who would meet with the vendor and manage the process. And then at specific points in time, come back to the larger group and we would say, yeah, we like that. This is great work, or change this one little thing or whatever.
Patrick, everything you're saying is great. I think we're a small enough group that the full committee could interview the finalists.
Oh, no, it's not about the finalists. It's about like, once we hire someone, they tend to want one.
Absolutely. I
point
agree with
person,
that too. Yeah.
I just want to go back to something Sally said, because I feel.
But just a subset of that, one person, but they would talk directly to Linda about historic preservation. Of course. Directly to Sally about open space.
I think that the group manages the process. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'm going to remember what I was going to say.
Was something I said, which was
Yeah.
clearly brilliant.
Clearly brilliant, and that I wholeheartedly support. And I just want to tell you my opinion on it. If you don't want someone cutting back down a 300-year-old sugar maple or demolishing the Daniel Chester French garden structure, we have to change the bylaw, and the fine has to be $10,000.
There's limits what the state will allow you to fine.
Well, we better go to the limit, because money reflects values.
No, not in this town, not anymore.
Well, Sally,
Not anymore.
fine, but that's what needs to happen.
The maximum daily fine is $300. And for some folks, a $300 a day fine for what could be a year even would be what, $10,000? And it
Can be ignored. I understand that. But I'm not willing to accept that. I want to investigate how we can make those fines reflect what this community values. Not how much money an outlander that came in earns a year, I don't care. But what this community values. And $100 a day because you tore down the Daniel Chester French Pavilion is not saying much.
But a fine, once the trees are cut or the pavilion is torn down, a fine is about vengeance. And we're not in the vengeance business. We're in the education business. Let me finish. We're in the education business to allow people to understand what the rules are and why these rules are important to the town and why they're good for the environment and why they're good for the care of the town and why they're good for the community. Because if we don't get them to buy into the value of the rules, we may all feel better if we can squeeze $25,000 out of the guy that tore down the pavilion, but it's not going to bring the pavilion back. We got to get this stuff done in a way that gets people to not tear it down or not cut down the trees. We
Okay,
got to
well,
build
that's
consensus.
patently absurd.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely, I mean, God bless you for every sentence, and it's absurd. People value different things. If they value their own pocketbook, then they'll attend to that. And we're not going to make them value a Daniel Chester French Pavilion. They don't even know who he is. The owner of that property, the day, the minute, the hour he bought that property, knew what it was and where it was on his property. He didn't want it there. It had to do with the levels he was creating. He had to create one height, Sally can explain this better than I can, for the septic system. And that changed, what am I talking about? The grade. And the reason that he wanted rid of it is because he wanted to grade in a certain way, starting at what he did with his
I haven't talked to him.
septic system. He wasn't valuing the Daniel Chester French Pavilion, and we're not going to make him value it in an alternate way of knowing what this community holds as important is getting fines that speak to that.
Well, I have stood
What does
up
that have to
and
do with CPC
I've
then?
stood up and spoken to.
I don't know, but
to
it has
this
to do with
issue.
what Sally said.
I've stood up and spoken to this issue, I don't know how many times in a Conservation Commission meeting and other places as well. You know, if you want to come and live in this town, there has to be a reason why you want to come and live in this town. And it is not, I would think, but what do I know? You know, why do you choose Stockbridge and not Englewood, New Jersey? Because you theoretically like Stockbridge because of whatever it represents to you. But then you come here and you do every bit of your project or every bit of your whatever, which is totally an antithesis to what the town stands for. And you are not a steward of your land. You're not a steward of the town. You're not a steward of the resources. You're not a steward of the history of the town. Why come here?
They see it differently. The people that came here en masse in the last 2 years came here because it was safe from COVID. They don't care about Concom. They don't care about our history.
My point
They don't
exactly.
know it.
I think
So
we're
we-
grossly generalizing a very diverse population, and it cannot hurt to try to educate them a little better.
Not from
And-
my
And just
experience.
since I've been on the select board, I'm not going to name them all up, but I can name 3 specific times where a historic structure was either demolished or significantly changed that was tragic, and there was, other than finding, it would never bring it back, you know. I mean, we could find them to make a point, but that doesn't mean that the next guy who didn't know the rules is going to know any better. We got to make people aware of the
But you
rules.
see, here's the challenge that you just brought up. Those people may not come from a community that values historic preservation. They may have grown up in Brooklyn in a high rise. So when they come here, they just don't have that level of passion. They can be anything they want. They can buy anything they want. So to have permission to destroy something to build exactly what they want, which costs triple than fixing what was there, you know, that's not the mentality anymore.
Okay, I have a motion to make. That I move that we, on Patrick's suggestion, that we pass a motion of 2 steps. And you want to restate your motion?
Is that on the plan?
What?
Is it on the
Yes.
plan?
One is the plan, first is the.
We develop a short list and a proposed budget for a community preservation plan.
Well, that's part B. We'll do part A first, which is the application process. You wanted to quickly,
I think we should leave the application process alone and look at
you said
modifying
you'd
it.
have Donna,
Yeah, but not for this year. I think it's too late.
I think that we do need to take this to town council though, because just because
Okay.
we weren't aware of it does not mean that it's not the correct thing to do. So I'm just concerned that when you are going to apply, and if it does apply to those applications for historic preservation money, they know it in advance because
Yeah.
of small institutions. You know,
I don't
there's
support any
often one-
changes to the
they might have
application
just
for this year.
One person to even consider that question, let alone a cash flow that would support hiring an attorney or whatever. So I think it's,
If we're going to bring in a consultant, let's have part of this process be reaching out to prior grantees and ensuring that if we make this change, A, we're required to, and B, that it wouldn't put a suffocating, impact on actual applications. We get a lot of applications for 5 or 10 grand, and for a prospective $5,000 or $10,000 pot of money, for someone to have to put a preservation restriction on may just mean that all we're going to get is the $100,000 church projects, and not the $5,000 or $10,000
All right,
small
just to
projects.
simplify all this, my motion is that we put into motion a process of preparing a community preservation plan, not over the next year, and that we will ask the select board to make the request from the funding that you suggested.
Okay.
And that we supplement it if needed with our own administrative funds, and that we initiate that process starting now.
Don't you want to add that we have a public meeting to get input?
That's
but that's
part
not
of,
part of
that's
it.
part of the process. There will definitely be a
So
public.
That would be a requirement.
That has to be a
That's
requirement.
written here, it's absolutely.
That's an assumed requirement, or
So
we have
Sally,
to mention it?
why don't we try to talk to Michael
I don't think you have to
together
mention it.
next day or
No, because
two
it's
about
assumed. Yeah, but it's so
how we
important.
We can put in the job
put this
description,
into a procurement
Okay.
conduct public meetings.
proposal and get a
Okay.
budget, and then we can take it to the select board.
Okay, so it's a
To your
single,
question here, it says right here, after the initial plan is created, the Commonwealth, the Community Preservation Committee must hold a public hearing.
Yeah. It'll be part of the deliverables of the consultant.
okay,
Jay, what is your thoughts on
All right,
this?
so we have a motion, 2 steps.
he likes it.
One step was to create the short list for a community preservation, preparing a community preservation plan using money that we hopefully can get from the select board. And 2, to leave the process alone this year with the stipulation that we'll have Donna review the application. But let me just say, we have been here 20 years getting all of these things to go through.
Yeah, there it is.
Never once has Donna said, do you have,
Ray.
or Ray, or whoever, I forget now who used to review it before Donna. Not
Ray
once.
Mary's.
Yeah, but no, there was a woman.
There was a
Jenny-
woman in
Jenny.
between. What was her name?
Jenny Merrill.
Jenny?
Yeah. And not one of them has said, do you have a,
Plan.
do you have a restriction on the property?
Okay.
Did you
that's-
get a restriction on the property?
Right.
So I'm guessing that that's not in their radar.
Right.
But I will certainly write to Donna and ask her.
Good, thank you. So that doesn't have to be part of the motion. The chair is going to take care of it.
All right.
The motion is to be simple. We resolve to seek funding from the select board to create a community preservation plan.
With a
And then, yeah, to pay for a consultant to help us create a plan. And then the mechanics of actually getting proposals, whether it involves, what is that, the state one called? The state database, the mass.
Makers?
What?
Chris.
No, the mass, the procurement database.
You talk
What's that
about
called, Jay?
Mass Historical Commission fees
No, there's
for
a.
people?
There's it's late in the day, I'm losing my mind. There's a state procurement database that you post,
Like the general register?
yeah, it's for like bidding.
Right.
It's, you know,
Let's assume we'll probably.
combis, yeah. So whether or not we need to post the combis or we can get our own,
How do you-
preferred vendors, we'll leave that to Michael and the town
How do we
staff.
spell
Right, we
that?
don't have to make that part of the motion.
We're just gonna make a motion that we're gonna try to pursue a community preservation plan, with a request.
Sally?
Yes.
I second the simple version of that motion.
Okay.
Consultant,
I
ARPA
agree.
funds.
But
Okay.
that doesn't
You
mean
okay?
that.
You
With
good?
application the same.
Absolutely.
You're okay with that, Jay?
Application process.
Yes,
Yeah.
he's good.
Don't connect the application to the preservation plan. Keep
Yeah,
that separate.
yeah, I agree.
Because that's-
No, we're not.
It's two
It's a
steps.
simple
What is
thing.
the
Don't make it two
application?
steps, make it two separate issues.
We won't change the application this year unless we receive something from Donna saying,
Right.
whoops.
Right, but that's not part of the motion. The motion is simple, that we're going to,
We had a 2-part motion.
We got rid of that.
She
We got rid of that.
We're withdrawing the second part of the
Yeah, we're
motion?
making
Yeah,
a
it's a
one-part
simple
motion.
Okay, so
motion.
the one part of the. motion
Consultant
is
to
get a consultant to prepare the plan with the money provided by the fund
ARPA.
and the select board. Okay, so that's the first one.
That's
And
it.
Tom made the motion, Carol seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Oh, my God.
So then we have the second motion, which is to leave the process alone for this year as it's posted on the website, unless and until we hear from Donna that it's not acceptable.
I think the motion should be that we empower you to
Right.
change the form
That's right.
if town council instructs you that it needs to be changed.
Okay,
I think the motion should be that the chair checks with town council if any change is necessary.
You are empowered to make the change.
okay.
Okay?
So are you, Patrick, you're making the
Yeah, sure.
motion? Second?
Yes,
All in favor?
yes, aye. Did you say?
Taking a-
Yes, absolutely.
Have a nap now?
You'd hear otherwise.
All right, so Deb, can we just go over the budget real quick?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
So, oh, wait, we have one more thing that's critical. We have to set,
Take it.
Erica and I met.
Don't take my stuff,
I
damn
won't
it.
take it.
Thank you.
I don't have it.
You have it on your computer.
Oh, it's on the computer.
Is that by
It's on
noon?
it's on the email.
Applications
By noon.
by noon on February 10th. But we need to set need to set the public meeting.
Oh, okay.
You need a motion for that?
No.
No, we just need to
Two
set
public
it.
meetings, one where the applicants can come in before February 10th.
Right.
And then one where we're going to decide, right?
Right, but the public meeting.
Public meeting is
On
critical.
where the applicants come in, and that should be
Last week in January?
at least, at the very least, 2 weeks ahead of the February 10th deadline.
Oh, my God, that's tomorrow.
February 10th.
You can have the public meeting
So the last week of January.
Sometime in January,
presentation.
we want to have the public meeting. That will,
Say Thursday.
I'll be, I don't think we can have the,
That's what I understand.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, what?
No, I was just talking to Carol.
How about the 26th of January? It's 2 weeks before.
I'll be in Washington DC.
How about the 23rd?
I'll be gone that week.
How about the 19th?
It's too soon.
Why?
For the public meeting?
9 days?
No.
No, it's 2 weeks away. Today is the
And
5th.
Way,
2 weeks from now, 19th?
I think that's too soon. I think we need to post it.
so do you
and give
want it,
people time to-
can you dial in from wherever you are?
I don't think it's too soon. They're all expecting it.
And that's pro forma, but I think the other
We
thing
have
is,
plenty of time to post it. We have plenty of time to do a public, or what do you call it? A press release.
could I make sure let's make sure that we get the input of the general counsel or town council before that meeting. So we can talk about that if it's needed. Someone says, what does that mean?
Yeah, really?
I can do any, so you just let me know. I think the 19th is a good day if we're keeping on Thursday. Or we could do the next week. Like the 25th or
Let's do the
26th.
19th.
He's going to be gone.
No, Tom's still here, right?
What are we doing on the 19th? Let's,
That's going to be the public meeting.
Public
That's when
hearing
they-
that's
yeah.
19th of,
Jan.
January, before the
January.
February.
oh, got it, okay.
Then we have to meet, like you said, we have to meet afterwards.
Right.
And we get the applications on the 10th. They've had almost a month.
So
Well,
the
they've had
public
3
meeting
weeks.
will be on the 19th.
Yes. So they'll have 3 weeks,
When was the second meeting going to be?
the 10th.
Feb 10.
That's
February
February
10th.
So January
February 10th is the
February
deadline.
Okay,
That's
wait a
the
minute.
deadline
February
for
19th.
applications.
Okay, but don't we have a meeting in between this where they make the
That-
presentation before they apply?
They would usually do that at the public meeting.
That's the 19th.
Okay, I
January.
get that. I'm thinking we're missing a meeting in this.
There's one
progression.
after the 10th when we make
It's a
decisions.
voting meeting.
Yeah.
Right.
But applications is not a meeting. We usually
Yeah,
have
so-
three.
Application is not a meeting.
This was usually the first one, I think.
This would have been the public information meeting.
No, this is the first, and then we had the
We usually
info.
have the meeting for the calendar, which is what we're doing,
Right, this is it.
and checking and making sure that our paperwork is in order. Then we set the public meeting, which is the 19th. And that's when the public can come in and they can ask questions and they can give us a presentation of their initial thinking.
Whatever they want to
And
say.
we'll say yes or no. We think that what they're presenting is acceptable or it's not. And then then they have 3 weeks until February 10th in order to get their applications in.
Then how long do
February
we
10th.
have?
Then we have to set another meeting for a vote. Or we usually set two. We usually have one for our initial vote in case we're not clear on how we want to decide.
Yeah,
And then we have a backup meeting.
right.
So between February 10th and when we have our meeting where we decide, we need enough time for the applications to go to town council, for Linda's commission to review and give their advice to town council as well, to make sure that the projects that are being submitted under historic preservation meet the requirements for historic preservation. So 2 weeks from then,
Yeah, so last week in February.
is that enough, Linda?
I think that, yeah, let me just, 1 second here.
It's 18 days.
18 days.
Yeah. Exactly.
There's surely going to be snow by then.
Oh, yeah.
So when in February we're going to meet?
We're trying to figure it out.
The deadline will be the 10th.
So if we have
For the
February
submission.
16th, that's 2 weeks.
Oh, it could be anytime on the 10th. Yeah, the 16th
That's
is.
6 days, Tom.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
We were thinking about the last week in February.
Why wait? Why, we don't need to wait. I mean, do we?
Well, don't you want to read it?
Oh, you,
And the historical commission.
Historic preservation and town council both need to review it.
Okay.
And town council
From
has to
February
read
10th.
everything.
We would probably need, would have to be like 2 weeks, I'm
Yeah.
thinking. Because you
That's why I
have
said
to
last week.
pass it through their office even.
So last
Could take
week in
time.
so
February.
we could do March. I mean, look, we just need it on the warrant in May.
Well,
It's not like we have to do it in
Let's try
February.
to, I think we need to refine this and squish it up. And if we were like every other town around here, we would be done already. So those people could apply for state money to match.
Well, we're in the process of revising that. That is why we have Erica.
We really
Because
got to-
next year we'll start earlier.
Yeah, a lot early.
And we're going to revise our whole calendar thing. It probably will be the same in terms of our meeting.
They're going to be on a 10 and they're going to be.
It'll probably be the same in terms of our meeting schedule, but it will be, but people will be able to send in their applications earlier. And we should know by then whether or not we have to have the.
It's of huge value to the nonprofits to be able to say that they have applied for the money,
Right.
because then they can use it in their match. And for
Yeah.
people who are going to match state money, it's November and January in the historic preservation world for the rounds. And there's another one somewhere after, but it's that November and January thing is what really, gum fudges people if they can't.
So for this go-round, what about the first meeting on Thursday, March 2nd, and then to have a meeting a week later for wrapping it up?
Does that
Thursday,
work
March
for you,
9th.
Linda?
Okay, so the actual voting meeting, February, what?
Tom said March 2nd.
Tom's suggesting March.
That's 3 weeks after then.
Yeah,
March
I know.
2nd would be the voting
I
meeting
said
on
February
the
28th.
applications,
What do you
right?
got?
March 2nd?
That would be the voting meeting, yeah.
So Linda, it's really up to you. How much time do you need between the 10th and when we have a voting meeting?
I think we could meet anytime, like the 23rd,
23rd? I'd rather
27th, 28th.
23rd.
Right, that's what I think.
27th or 28th.
Right, the only thing with the 23rd is there's a select board meeting at 6:30, so
On the-
sometimes these meetings go long, and
So-
so it only gives us 2.5 hours. Maybe could we start at 3 instead of 4?
What about the 27th?
Yeah, 27th or 28th. 28th would be good.
My son is a Monday, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, 27th.
Okay, let's go for the 27th.
Good, that's great.
And then we,
Monday, the
4 o'clock.
27th?
Yeah,
Monday, the 27th?
Voting meeting.
yeah, and that's voting. And then,
we would have a backup in March.
right, what is it? What date?
But the next Monday.
The next
Following
Monday?
Monday.
Have to be a Monday?
Let's see,
Oh, wait, it's March 20, oh, wait.
6th.
March 6th,
That's the
that's
date of the, what, I'm sorry, what's the date that we're going for the first meeting?
February 27th.
Okay, I
Okay,
got the-
and
I got
that,
the
what
month wrong.
time? 4?
4 is good for me.
4 is good.
All right, let's go.
Where's a good time? That's good, yeah.
Okay, so one more time, the backup meeting, March the
6th,
Sixth.
4 o'clock. So it's January 19th, February 10th, February 27th, and March 6th. Is that right?
Would,
We need to get the public meeting on the website. yeah.
Look at how neat you are.
Backup meeting is going to be when?
Mine's all squiggles.
Monday the
March
6th.
6th.
you don't,
Or make it can we make it the 2nd?
What do you mean?
2?
what is in the
that's-
second? Oh,
That's only 3 days later.
Oh, it could be, doesn't
Not-
matter.
It's like 5 days later,
How is it 5 days? There are only 28 days in February.
because we're going from the 27th to the 2nd.
To the 28th, to
so
the
the
1st.
27th,
to
3 days
the
later.
2nd is
Second is a
Monday,
Thursday.
Thursday. You want to meet a Monday and a Thursday?
There are only 28 days
Yeah,
in February.
No,
the
but
point
the
is, yes, I have no problem meeting a Monday and a Thursday.
27th is a Monday. Oh, right, you're right. I'm sorry. You're
I
right.
know, and the following Monday's the 6th,
Okay, the 6th then.
Okay, how about times? What time on the
4
19th?
o'clock.
4 o'clock, I'm all
4
for it.
o'clock for the public meeting.
And what about the 27th?
4
4
o'clock,
o'clock,
Good. And the 6th would be the same.
4 o'clock,
absolutely. Sally?
our backup.
So,
We're not done. We gotta still,
so Monday, 26th.
I'm afraid of Sally.
I could play shuffleboard. That was a perfect push.
It was wonderful.
So are Mondays better for people than Tuesdays?
Yeah, much.
Tuesdays are never good for me.
Okay.
Yeah,
Have my
I agree.
grandchildren.
Never good.
I could bring them with me.
That'll make it go
my
real
God.
fast.
Can we just talk about the money for 2 seconds? Before everyone packs up.
Just kidding, Sally.
So, and I can just give you the bottom line. I'm not suggesting we need to spend all of this, but we have basically 683K that's available to spend before we get to fiscal year '24, which is next year. If we add in the anticipated revenues only from the town side, nothing from the state side, that's another 230,000, and which would give us a total kitty of 914,000. I'm not at all suggesting, once again, to reiterate, that we spend 914,000. However, we have basically 914,000 while leaving all the state match for fiscal year '24 in a reserve kitty, not knowing how much that would be. So, that includes the money, 492,000 of the money that we have undesignated as of 6/30/22, the end of the last fiscal year. It includes the money that we spent last year, plus the money we took in this year, plus the state grants this year. So total that we have right now is 683,453. Anticipating next year's taxes, which is a certainty, the 3% from the town, we have property taxes. The total is 914,000. That's what our universe of money is.
We're the rich kids.
Well, we may need to be the rich kids.
We may.
If we have one of
What are
these,
you anticipating?
if we have one of these big open space things,
And
Yeah,
we can always bond
we
that.
may need to be
Might
the
need to
rich
do
kids.
both.
We can always bond that over 10 or 20 years. Open space is
Yeah.
a perfect thing to bond.
So,
you have to seed a bond.
What?
Do you have to put some money up?
No, so you want to do $1 million towards this one property, you do 50,000 a year for 20 years, plus a little bit of interest, 55,000 a year. So, you want to do a
We don't
major.
have to take anything out of the
No,
900,000.
you take 50,000 a year over 20 years. With open space, they're typically bonded, not, you don't want to spend down all your money and not have money available for housing or, historic.
Okay,
And we might have an historic, we might have affordable housing.
Yeah.
If we want to acquire a piece of property for affordable housing, that's not going to be cheap either. So I'm not concerned about having this kind of money. In fact, I'm really happy about having this kind of money.
Yeah. And I think Erica and Michael did a great job in the last year.
Yes.
Putting all the numbers together so that we know what we have.
We can actually understand it, which for me is,
isn't that marvelous?
I used to hand it to Jay and say, Jay, tell me what this means.
Man, you're
Okay.
such a finance.
Okay?
Okay,
Is everybody good?
yep.
All right. Randy, anything you have to say or think or,
Is it,
Impressive meeting.
okay.
Erica, is there anybody online?
No.
Has there been at all?
No. There wasn't anybody at the beginning.
They don't care when we meet.
So nobody wants to ask us a
Funny to me that this is really
Got
the number, this is the discretionary spending committee for the entire town of Stockbridge. And it always amazes me how it doesn't get like 25 people on these meetings talking about kind of priorities. But nevertheless, whatever.
All right, we do, we get, people are really interested when it comes time to
Yeah,
really do
wait
something.
till those last two meetings.
they're-
You'll have
Well, the
plenty.
applicants are, but I mean, the townspeople are. They're just surprising.
See, they are
Do you want to
used
call a
to it.
motion to adjourn?
They're used to it.
Second.
All right.
Thank you, Jay.
5:20.
Good.
Motion to adjourn.
Yay, yay.
You're the best.
Time to check the freezer.
There you go.